All right, Skeleton Crew, it just ended. All 8 episodes are now on Disney Plus. So, how's it stack up? Well, I'd say the show is probably one of the best Disney has to offer, but given how low the bar is it really that good at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. It's a fun adventure show, and sure, none of us asked for it, but hey, what are you going to do? It's definitely one of the stronger Disney Star Wars shows. I mean, some of these shows have been disappointing. One or two have been outright disastrous. You know who you are, Acolyte and Book of Boba Fett. Some have been good at first, but, couldn't really stick the landing. Ahsoka, not a bad show, but last 2 episodes, not so good. And then there were some shows they made that were pretty good, like Mandalorian Season 1 and 2. And this. And yeah, it's a kid's show, and it's what I call Star Wars light, not to be taken too seriously. It's still surprisingly good.
Yeah, I mean, it's enjoyable. From the very beginning, I thought the first 2 episodes were going to be very kid-centric, and it basically was, but there were times where it wasn't. Jude Law's character, Jod, what's his full name again?
God Naywood.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he was actually the most interesting character in the entire show, I feel. And, I like how morally ambiguous he was throughout the entire thing, how far he was willing to go to get what he wanted. It was kind of like a mishmash of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. I really like that.
Definitely agree with you there. Definitely an interesting character. He's not really evil, definitely not good, but doing what he has to do to survive. And then they touch on his backstory later in the series.
As far as the kids, though, I mean, the kids did a good job. The ones that played Fern, Neil, JB, and Wim. You know what? Nothing against the kids at all. I just didn't particularly care about their characters at all. I just was just not interested after a while. I mean, the most interesting one to me was probably Neil, that little elephant Max Rebo character. But other than that, I was just like, I don't care. I really don't care.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, the kids did a good job. And like you said, Jude Law was good. Nick Frost as a droid was great. I didn't know Jaleel White, a.k.a. Steve Urkel, was going to be in the show.
Yeah, I knew he was going to be in the show, but I totally forgot. Then I saw him and I was like, is that Steve Urkel? I'm like, oh yeah, that is Steve Urkel. That was pretty cool.
But as far as the acting, I really didn't have any complaints. I mean, there was definitely a few things that sounded off here and there. More of a dialogue issue. But let's be real, that's nothing new when it comes to Star Wars. I don't think there's a single Star Wars project that doesn't have some seriously questionable dialogue at times. I mean, that's how it's been since the 70s. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, but conversely, there are times where the dialogue is pretty good. One example is episode 5, when they get into that schwanky, luxurious hotel and they go in and Jude Law's character is all freaked out because he's like, oh my god, they're going to find us, the pirates. But then the kids are jumping on the bed and stuff. And he's like, stop doing that. Are you listening to any of us? And like they stop and they're like, yeah, we are. Oh yeah? What did I just say? Are you listening to any of this? I thought, okay, that's pretty good. So there are times where the dialogue is pretty good, but there are times where it doesn't work. And I know it's a hallmark of Star Wars to have really crappy lines, and you kind of let it slide because it's endearing and cute, and it's like, oh, it's a fun, whimsical adventure. When it comes to not just Disney era Star Wars, but even prequel era George Lucas Star Wars, you kind of stop making excuses for that after a while because you're just like, well, the storytelling has to be on par. The characters have to be on par. So if the dialogue is not really on par, we don't really care. But if everything else is kind of like janky and kind of loose around the seams, then you kind of notice little things more and more. Yeah, we talked about Jude Law's character, Jod, and the kids. There are far more characters in this. It's just hard to really remember all of them, like the parents, for instance. Yeah, they're there and they have their own little side plot. They're trying to find their kids and stuff, but honestly, who cares? I know they served a function in the story, but they just weren't that interesting. Let's just be honest. I felt like some characters were just kind of like extraneous. That were just not useful. Like that owl character in episode 3.
Yeah, I think they could have substituted that character for anybody. Or I hardly ever mention the new movies, but I think in one of the new movies I think it's in the new movies, there's a character named Maz Kanata, and
yeah,
I think she gives a lightsaber to Rey in one of the movies, and I don't remember which one, but
it was the first one.
The first one. Okay, that's probably why I remember it, because that's the only
Where'd you get
one
this?
I've seen.
That's the story for another time. That's J.J. Abrams scribbling on the script. Okay, we're gonna figure this out later, guys. Trust me. Even though I have a long history of setting up things and never explaining them, it's fine, guys. It'll work. The audience is stupid. They're never gonna question this.
Yeah. I mean, you could have thrown any character in that. They're the owl in this one, but I agree with you what you said earlier, that Jod rather, is definitely interesting, and backstory there that they kind of explore a bit, character development, which they, to be fair, there's a lot of character development for a lot of the characters in the show. I think they did a good job overall with that. But there's definitely a lot more that they could explore if there was a season two. But I gotta say, I mean, the show had decent action scenes, character development, suspense, definitely a lot of mystery. I mean, what's the deal with the planet? What's really going on there? Oh, okay, that's what it is. You know, what's the deal with Jude Law's character, Jod? Is he a former Jedi? Is he even force sensitive, or is that a ploy, a ruse? You know, so there's a lot of things that a lot of questions we have early on, and then we find out more and more as the show goes on. Definitely by the finale, we find out even more.
In terms of the best qualities of the show, the action sometimes was really good. Sometimes it was really absurd, like that one episode where the kids took control of that little ship and there's this giant hermit crab monster thing coming at two of the characters, and then they had to get him in time. I thought that was a little bit too much. And overall, anytime the kids are piloting any ships, that to me was already absurd. But sometimes it was cool, like when the ship was caught into this garbage disposal thing and they have to push that little button to get the ship out and it turns into a little ship or something like that.
Oh man, that was a great scene. It was the end of, I forgot what episode it was, but essentially they hit that button and it's like an emergency hull demolition sequence or something, and so then it exposes the real ship inside. And it's funny because that actually reminded me of something that looks can be deceiving, and it reminded me of in A New Hope when Luke Skywalker calls the Millennium Falcon a piece of junk. He doesn't know the true nature of the ship, you know, being one of the fastest ships in the galaxy. And at least Falcon was the fastest ship of its kind, being a Corellian freighter. And, but, you know, super upgraded and modified, of course. So it made me think of that a little bit. Like, you just don't know what's going on beneath the surface, you know?
Yeah, in terms of mystery and adventure, though, I did like in episode 5 in particular where they find these underground hidden chambers to find the coordinates to the planet they're supposed to find full of treasure. And I like that when they first go there, they're like, okay, this is like, I forgot how to describe it. It was like a desolate area. But as soon as they go there, now there's a big hotel on top of it. So they had to sneak in, pretend to be highballers. And once they're in the hotel, they have to find their way down to where the pirate secret chambers are. I thought that was pretty cool. And also in episode 3, where they go into that rebellion planet thing, I thought that was interesting, but it's also a little far fetched because there seems to be no other governing bodies coming in to help squash this rebellion. So they train the kids to fight and stuff like that, and then the main kids have to fight with them. And I thought that was a little too contrived.
Yeah, that's true. I did find it interesting, though, that they did incorporate all these other planets, like the one you mentioned. I think it's called Akron. That's the war-torn one with the factions and the rebels. Um, that was like, or at Akron, as opposed to at Atten. And then clearly they have other planets that are similar. And this planet they thought was their home, but obviously it's not. And so for whatever reason they chose at Atten to be the one that's serving a purpose. And um so there is a decent amount of world building on those side planets and stuff. And at least they also connected enough where that planet they do gather intelligence to make their way back home. So I feel like they did a pretty good job connecting a few things like that.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I felt like the show was a little too contrived. You get to the whole thing where the kids accidentally get off their planet and they don't know where their planet is, but it turns out their planet was what the pirates were looking for all this time. I thought like that's a decent setup, I feel like, but in some ways I was just like it seems a little too far fetched. I don't know. I couldn't really put my finger on it.
No, I mean that's fair. I mean the whole show was going on, you know, familiar themes. It's kind of like, as we always say, it's like Goonies in space. And I don't think the pirates were looking for Ad Atten the whole time, right?
They weren't, but Jod was, I think.
I don't think Jod knew.
Yeah, see, I mean, like we're not even remembering specific points of the show, so that
I
gets
don't see.
that's why it's contrived because you don't, it doesn't add
I,
up correctly.
to my knowledge, nobody was talking about Ad Atten until the kids in the first or the second episode when they're in the Nar Shaddaa like criminal place where he's locked up.
Because of the gold, I feel like too, because you saw the gold and they're like, "Where did you get this from?" It's old, it's old like Republic credits or something.
Republic, yeah, it's old currency, but nobody. see, it's like add-ins people have heard of, but they're the kids are the ones who mentioned it, and I don't think there was any. There, Jaw definitely, because in the opening of the first episode, you do see that he's always getting those pirates to go to the next mission, and I think they're unsuccessful most of the time. That's why they're fed up, and there's a mutiny and all that. And so he's so desperate, but then he overhears this talk about Atten, and so then it starts, being discussed. And so for him, it was just another way to connect to his crew and wiggle his way back into leadership.
So my contention is that I feel like the story was too contrived. That's my contention. And getting
Hmm.
into it, hearing it more, I'm like, yeah, this is why it's contrived. It's not. No, I don't need this to be like a storybook for 3-year-olds or anything like that. It just is like,
Yeah.
but when you look into the original Star Wars, the original Star Wars is pretty straightforward. There's an evil empire. They're trying to find this princess because she has coordinates that would destroy their little base. Well, in the course of trying to get that little droid, all these other people end up getting, thrown into the fray, and they all get captured at some point because they're trying to get the little droid into the rebel base. And what do you know? They escape, and then they get the coordinates to the base, the rebel base, and they blow up the space station after all.
But this is not that much different though. I don't think this is as contrived as you think. It's really think about this show is just about a group of kids who wanted adventure. They they get into it way more than they'd planned. They want to get back home. They need someone to help them, and this person has a agenda of their own, and
He wants to help him,
uh,
but it turns out
he
they
wants to
have
help them, but he has his
something.
own agenda for riches and glory and to continue. So
Yeah,
that's
but
really,
that,
I
but
mean,
that, but
that's
that's
really the
that.
story of it.
That's where it gets contrived because, like, why would he use these kids for riches? Oh, because he can overhear that they come from a particular planet, and that's the plot twist that the
Uh,
planet they're from has all the gold at the bottom of
No,
the
no, no,
basement or
no,
whatever.
no, no. It totally makes sense because when you're introduced to him, he's in jail. He's locked up. His team has given up on him. They mutineered, and because they're fed up with him. So this is his only chance. This is his opportunity to get in their good graces again, get a squad again, and get back to leadership and glory and whatever.
Yeah,
And
but in very basic
so this is
terms,
their ticket. His ticket is
I
these kids,
yeah, I get
and
that. But in very basic terms, I mean, like the ship that they escaped from. Why wouldn't those coordinates be in the ship itself?
because the ship isn't.
Why doesn't the robot have coordinates to get back home? You see how it get? That's why they have to make it contrived.
Oh no, that's explained. Well, that's explained though because the robot belonged to someone else, right? The robot only, serves its master, right? So,
But that was the ship that was already on their planet, right?
right, and the ship belonged to that legendary pirate, right? Where they found the lightsaber, where they're in that place, and that legendary pirate, that's his actual ship. So Jod knows that stuff, but they don't know that, you know, there's a lot of stuff they don't know. Even he doesn't know. So,
It's kind of like if Star Wars was originally like the first one was like, okay, it starts with Luke Skywalker. He's on this desert planet, and he finds a ship there, and then it escapes, and then he gets out of his planet, but he doesn't know where his planet is. He has because he's never escaped before out of his planet, and it turns out upon all these little adventures he goes on, he has to go back to his planet because he has the coordinates. Turns out his desert planet is where this utopian underground society is. You know what I mean? It's the same sort of
but it's
setup.
different though because Luke, everybody in Star Wars, other than this planet and this show, all these places know the universe that they live in, the galaxy. So even though Luke's never left Tatooine, and that's what he dreams of doing as a pilot, they know the world around the universe around
Yeah,
them.
whereas these
Right?
people were kept in the
This
dark
planet is
deliberately.
deliberately isolated for a particular reason,
Well, it gets it. Well, it gets
where they're
into it.
completely shut off,
Well,
right,
it gets into
to
another
be
problem
hidden.
too, because then getting into the great plan,
It's a Camino, but not really.
well, it gets into like the great plan, whatever they call it. It's just like, okay, so they have these people in this planet, and it's sheltered from the outside world, and it's encased in greenish toxic fog or whatever. And you're just like, okay, so you have this AI that's basically telling people you need to work, is you all have plans in this environment that you're in to do stuff. But I'm all like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't get the point. Why does the
The
robot
point of
need
the point of the
people?
planet.
Why does the robot need to enslave people to do its bidding? Why can't it just make other robots?
That's a good. I mean, that's a question
See, this
that
is where it
I,
doesn't
you
make
know,
any sense. You know,
a planet of just droids. But I think that then that also opens up other questions. Like, then why, why have people at all? You can just have droids for everything. But
not
droids are
not
expensive.
yeah.
Droids need to be maintained by people. You know,
Not necessarily. I mean, because it's just like it's because droids only are made to serve humanoids or flesh creatures, carbon-based creatures. Whereas this is they're not ruled by AI. Whereas this is a society ruled by AI. So why would the AI need humans?
yeah. I mean, a different approach they could have done was the overlord of that planet isn't that big freaking Dalek or whatever droid fucking thing it was, and it could have just been that those could have been humans, and then the mom is part of that. She's a supervisor of it, so the council is humans, and then maybe the workers are droids. They could have flipped it the other way, but then that planet has to be isolated and hidden and shut off from the universe. So like it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like you still have everyone has to have a purpose, right? Otherwise, there's chaos, right? So I
Yeah,
understand why they had that. They basically made it like this weird suburban utopia type of thing, but they made it in a way where it's like almost like some sort of communist type of
it would have been a
thing.
lot better instead of this big AI thing. They could have had a Jim Jones kind of a person at the top, and that's the person that they, answer to, or Wizard of Oz kind of guy. You know what I mean?
But, but I understand why it's a droid because that droids can be programmed. So this planet is controlled by the Republic, right? And the Republic doesn't want the information because this planet and what's on there is old Republic, right? So
It's guarding
the
gold. Yeah.
droid can be programmed to do certain things, and there's not a problem. If the Republic had this hidden planet and put a human in charge, that human's eventually going to grow old and die, and someone else has to be nominated. That human could end up being greedy, compromise the whole project. So I do kind of see why a droid would be running the shit, you know?
Yeah, it's but then you get to the question again, like why have humans when you can just have it all be controlled by droids if it's especially of that utmost importance. And also the whole thing is like all this coordinates came from a pirate who crash landed his ship, or the ship somehow was I don't know exactly. I know why it was there. It's to kind of kickstart the adventure and get into this little treasure hunting kind of thing, like Indiana Jones-esque kind of a journey. But at the same time, you're just like, how did that happen? Practically within the
Yeah,
universe. That's why it goes back to me being contrived, and it's not just that too. In episode 3 with the little owl thing, John could have easily
yeah.
shot that owl. He did not. He did not kill it. You could probably go back into saying like, well, he's not really evil. He's morally ambiguous.
He's
But
not a
yeah, but at the
yeah.
same time, it's just like that owl was going to out you, and he was going to destroy your chances of getting your thing. So what difference does it make? I don't know. I know
I mean,
practically
he
why.
could have killed many people. Yeah, he's not
And
good or bad. I
I
think.
mean, he
I mean,
did.
he's kind of a bad
I
guy,
mean,
but
he did. He killed the captain of the ship in
he
the
did
last
kill.
episode. He decapitated the robot. That's a robot, but still, I mean, like, so
Yeah, the
it's
robot.
it's a little. I like the character, but that was a little. You could tell the writers were like, we can't kill the owl character because it's a cute character, and people will be upset.
Uh, well, no, because the owl is important later because the owl is the one who is able. They're able to connect to get the Republic, the X Wings
Well, yeah,
to say
but that was in the
you need
same
the
episode.
owl.
But that was in the same episode,
Not the same
correct?
episode, yeah, but they can't. If you kill the owl, kill the owl, then you have to figure out another way later. There's no other way to connect. So you have to figure out some other way that the kids and stuff have met someone else that'll help them in a time of need later.
Yeah, well, the
Which you
X-wing.
can, but
I mean, you could have mortally wounded the owl or something. He could have shot the owl. Is what I'm saying, and think that he killed her or whatever.
oh,
But then
that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, again, it would make him more evil, and that would kind of give him up as a character. But there were a lot of it goes into like how the show was set up, and there's a lot of things in the show where just like I see why that had to be done, but logically speaking, that doesn't make any sense. I see where they're going in the course of the adventure, but when you break it down, it doesn't really make any sense. So over the
Mhm.
course of the show, I was just like, I could see that they were just trying to make this grand story, and it's just like it's got twists and turns and all this stuff, but it just comes across to me as like, like I'm not really vibing with this too much. Sometimes I am, but most of the time I'm not. And in terms of
Yeah.
other Star Wars shows, is this better compared to most of them? I would say yeah, because when you look at Acolyte, for instance, Oh my god, that is contrived, but it's also poorly written. The characters are awful. They're not interesting. It doesn't go anywhere. At least when it comes to the end of this show, Skeleton Crew, there is a point, even as convoluted as it was to
Mm.
get there, in my opinion. There was a
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
and it does set up for another season, I believe, right?
This one does. It definitely there's stuff to explore and stuff, but unfortunately, it didn't do well viewership wise. So yeah, as far as the finale, look, I mean, it wasn't quite as good as I had hoped. It was fine. I think probably 10, 15 minutes would have been beneficial, flesh out the conclusion a bit more. I don't know if it's because they thought a season two would happen, but and that's why they took that approach. But clearly, it was missing something at the end. Oh, I know what it was, a proper conclusion. But with the low viewership that we've heard about, I think it's unlikely we're going to have a season two. I think overall the review ratings, the feedback is pretty positive. Like you said, most people find it's favorable, right?
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, not enough people watching the show. So, it's unfortunate, but I think if it was released a little bit further back in time, it might have done well. I mean, Disney Star Wars has lost the trust of Star Wars fans, right? Including us.
Oh
So,
yeah. I mean, I came into this pretty pessimistically, but I've been going
yeah,
into this pretty pessimistically since the very beginning. As soon as Disney got Star Wars, I was like, nothing good's going to come out of this. And in some ways, I'm
some good
wrong.
as, yeah,
Yeah, because there was some good, but there's mostly a lot of bad. So
true,
when it comes
true.
to this show, do I classify this as good or bad? I'd say it's neither. I'd say it's okay. It's fine. It's decent. It's entertaining enough. Jod is a good character. The kids were fine. The overall adventure was fun at times. There were episodes where I was like, "Oh, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed watching that." But at the same time, there was not enough meat on the bone. At times, it was trying to justify a very, very convoluted setup storyline and trying to make it into a little adventure. And
Mm,
it was cute, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And honestly, the most interesting part to me in the entire show was probably in the last episode where Jod finally reveals a little bit as to why he has Jedi powers. And it turns out he was visited by a Jedi, ostensibly because of Order 66. She was on the run and she was desperate, tired, hungry, disheveled, finds him, realizes he has potential, decides to train him a little bit in the Force, but then she got hunted down and killed it right in front of him.
yeah,
When he said that, and that was only through dialogue, no flashbacks or nothing, like no visual flashbacks or anything, I was like, that's interesting. Why couldn't that be the show? I would rather watch that.
yeah. I totally agree. Although I will say I'm glad there wasn't another Order 66 scene like we've seen already in other shows and or
Yeah.
Clone Wars stuff, but definitely explains a lot of his character and him doing whatever it takes to survive. And, he had a chance to be something or somebody, and that was taken from him when the Jedi starting to train him was killed. He wasn't even a Padawan at that point. He was probably just a recruit. Like 2 weeks later, his Jedi
Maybe.
master is dead.
I think my
So,
yeah, but overall, I think my point is that that character is better
yeah,
suited in a different property, where instead of like having to babysit a bunch of little kids, he should have been
right.
next to another scoundrel or another person that's in the Republic or something like that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it would have been more traditional Star Wars in that sense, but at the same time, not really. It's like you're not doing A New Hope all over again, but at the same time, you're going back to the basic tenets of what makes an adventure, which is you have a
Right.
rogue scoundrel with dodgy morals, and then you have an upstanding citizen that's trying to do right, and that's
Yeah.
represented in the form of the kids. But I'm like, the kids are like, it's like having Indiana Jones having to babysit the kids from the Goonies. Would that have worked? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Because then you'd be like, the Goonie kids are cool and all, but I want to see more about what's going on with this Indiana Jones character. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
This is like
Hon-
the same thing.
yeah. Honestly, though, I would watch a season two of this show if they made it. Clearly, highly unlikely it's going to happen. I think there is more to explore, as we said. There's more to explore with the characters. Obviously, Jod, as you mentioned. So they have something there, and they could build on it for maybe one more season. Just one more season. Let's not push it. But I don't think that's going to happen. So
I have a better proposition.
Mhm.
How about you just make a brand new show with just Jod?
You could,
That
yeah,
I
sure.
would rather watch that. And then if you want to put the kids back in at some point as a guest cameo role or whatever, do that. That'd be cute. But make it just about Jod. He's just really the most interesting thing in this entire show. And honestly, in terms of Disney Star Wars characters, I think he's probably one of the best ones. Dare I say, he's probably the best one.
Interesting.
That's my take on that. I mean, who do you think is a better of the new characters in Disney Star Wars? Who do you think is better or just as good?
I'm not sure. I'd have to think of it based on depending on what shows.
Only the stuff that
In
Disney
this
Star Wars created, not anything from George Lucas Star Wars. Like Jyn Erso
Disney,
comes
I think that
close.
with with Disney, I think some of the characters it's a little different, but with Rogue One, I think some of those characters were good. Of course, we see them in Andor.
Yeah, but Jyn
I
Erso,
I think
I like Jyn Erso, but she's not better than Jod.
right. I
Or
think in I think
Andor, he's not as interesting as Jod.
yeah, I think in Ahsoka, of course, a lot of those characters are well established, but the ones they created, like Balin and Shin, I think those were two interesting characters that were created for the show.
Eh.
That were actually, I think most of the fans enjoyed that part. Yeah, on the top of my head, I can just thinking of that.
I make a declaration. Jod is the best Disney Star Wars character.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah, because honestly, I
maybe.
honestly can't think of
Fair opinion, yeah.
honestly can't think of anyone that's better. I know you gave off a few
I didn't
examples,
think too, yeah,
but
yeah,
honestly, at the end of the day, when you think of Jod, what do you think of? Scoundrel, greedy, dodgy morals, does have a conscience, is willing to hold back, is willing to get into reckless danger to get what he needs. It's like
yeah.
these are Han Solo esque characteristics, but on top of that, he's force sensitive. So he's not quite a Jedi. He's not quite a Sith in that kind of in those terms. He's what they call the gray Jedi. He is the in betweener, and we haven't really seen that fully explored yet, at least to my knowledge, except through this character. And even if it was explored before, it wasn't done as well as this character was. So I
They
mean,
definitely did a good job with that, and like I said, there's more that they could explore. Probably not going to happen, but we'll see what happens. But
yeah. Well, like I said, if they do no Skeleton Crew season 2, that's fine by me. Just take Jod, pluck
yeah,
him out, put him in the other shows. You know what? That would be pretty interesting. You know, I honestly, too, dare I say, too, like, what's his face from the Alkalite, the bad guy dude with the
yeah.
goopy, toothy nose?
Chimere.
Kamir, yeah. He was okay. I would say I plucked him
Yeah.
out to make a spin-off show of the characters that worked but were in failed TV shows and give them their own show. And
Well,
I think,
The Jedi Master was cool too. I forgot his name, but
uh, from which
from Acolyte.
well, there were a bunch of them. Like which one?
The one the Korean actor from Squid Games.
Oh, that dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, he's
I
dead
can't
now.
remember what
But the
his
problem
name.
is he's
Oh yeah,
dead.
yeah,
And that
of course,
also that
yes.
show was 100 years ago, right? So that wouldn't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
damn. Oh well. But
But
I'm like, yeah, but that would had they been in the same timeline, that probably would have worked okay. I'd be like, oh, okay, that'd be interesting.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, as far as shows, you're talking about characters that Disney has given us that they can continue with. But there's so many characters that Disney hasn't used that we have from Legends and EU extended universe and all this stuff, and
Of course,
that
yeah.
they can use, and so that always is interesting whether they can do
Well,
something good, or of course they may ruin a character that we enjoy.
well, that's the
So
thing. Yeah, that is exactly what you said.
you don't know what you're getting. At
They
the end
could
of the day.
ruin the character. That's why you don't want to really have them use established characters, even in Legends lore. So, of the
Right.
characters they already created, who actually is good? Who could you reuse? And I put Jod at the top of that list for sure. Within
Yeah.
that timeline, I don't know. He can mingle with the Mandalorian. That'd be pretty fucking cool.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's the same timeline, but I don't really know.
Mm,
I haven't looked it up, so I don't know.
yes.
Is it?
Yeah, that's about right. It's about 5 years after Return of the Jedi, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
I know
about
that's
5 years.
I know it's the Mandalorian timeline, but I don't know if that's the.
And Ahsoka timeline too, I think, right?
Yeah, I'd say
About
so.
5 years. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking it up. What's the timeline?
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. It takes place in the year 9 AB, ABY. I mean, so yeah, it's 9 years after the events of the first movie.
Okay.
So it's 100% within the timeline.
Yeah.
So yeah, make it just have that character mingle with Mandalorian with Din.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
I
cool.
think they have the movie coming out. And they may even do another season of the show, from what I've heard. But
Oh yeah, that movie. Yeah,
But as
watch
far
it.
as upcoming things, we already know Andor season 2 will be out in April.
Oh
And
yeah,
they're working on Ahsoka season 2, of course.
I might
So
as well catch up on Mandor, so I could see what's happening.
yeah,
So yeah, overall, when it comes to this show, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. I'd say Jod is the best character in the entire show. I'd say Disney, give this guy his own show. He deserves it. Overall, though, I feel like even though it's one of the best Disney Star Wars shows, the bar is just incredibly low. So on its own, I think I'd probably give it, I don't know, 7 out of 10. It's fine. It's not great.
actually where I was leaning. I was thinking maybe 7.5, but that's coming off of an awful Acolyte series. So maybe a 7 is more fitting. I mean, it's like having a fast food burger and thinking it's amazing because you were traveling and coming off of airplane food. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe,
then
yeah, 7 out of 10 works for me.
then you remember the filet mignon you had like a few years back.
Yes, yes. But yeah, 7 out of 10, that works for me. Show was good.
All right, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Tell us what you think down below. Did you like the show? Did you hate the show? Let us know in the comments. And we'll be seeing you the next time something Star Warsy comes up on our radar.
Oh yeah, and may the force be with you.